I'd like to call the meeting to order, and if someone could put up the accessibility statement. This meeting is accessible to people with disabilities. Microphones or telephones will be used by all speakers. Large print materials are available upon advance request. If you would like either of these accommodations, please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 at extension 202. The notice of non-discrimination rights and protections to beneficiaries with regard to the federal Title VI non-discrimination protections and the state non-discrimination protections is posted in this meeting room and is available at the Okolanie Planning Council website. Please contact Mary Waldron at 508-583-1833 extension 202 and for more information, and thank you all. Thank you all for joining us. I'm going to move on to public comments. Do I hear any public comments? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to item 3, which is minutes of March.
Noreen, there is a Matthew has his hand up for public comment.
Sorry. Yes, I'm Matthew Peterson, representing the Public Transit Advocacy Nonprofit Transit Matters. We've talked with you all before. I just wanted to touch on something that was mentioned in the MBTA's and MassDOT CIP this year. We've talked in the past about the importance of the Old Colony Line bottleneck in Dorchester and Quincy to the south coast and to the Old Colony region. Since then, several mayors, including Mayor Sullivan in Brockton, have signed on to a letter urging the MBTA to make an investment in addressing the Old Colony bottleneck, specifically the single track section through Dorchester and Quincy that constrains service on the Middleborough line, Old Colony lines, and the Greenbush line. Yet the CIP still doesn't have any funds with it. And as we approach the day when South Coast Rail is running, we will have more trains than ever running through the single track section that provides a lot of constraint on the system. So we urge as many people as possible to write to the T and urge the inclusion of this project. We think it's very important for the region and for the system overall. You can send emails to cipengagement@mbta.com. And we really hope that this lack can be addressed in the future. Thank you for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you, Matthew.
Madam Chair, just for Matthew, if you can just put the contact in the chat for all those, that would be great. Thank you.
Will do, doing it right now.
Thank you, Matthew, and thank you, Mary. I'm going to move on to item 3, which is minutes of the March 3rd, 2022 meeting. Any questions, revisions, or do I hear a motion on the floor?
I'll make that motion, Dan Salvucci.
Okay.
Don Howard, second it.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Communications, that would be Sean.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There are multiple items on the communications packet for this month. First item is the state fiscal year 2023 Community Transit Grant Program application training announcement. The Community Transit Grant Program is the consolidated competitive opportunity for federal transit section 5310, enhanced mobility of seniors and individuals with disabilities. The application is scheduled to open on Friday, April 29th and close at 5 p.m. on Friday, June 24th. If you would like, attendance at one of the trainings is mandatory for all new applicants. Previous awardees are also welcome and encouraged to attend. Please RSVP to Jennifer Henning at MassDOT. And for additional information, please click on the hyperlink provided in the staff report. Next item is Bay State Bike Month. It is returning in May 2022 to align with National Bike Month. There are multiple save the dates listed in the staff report. May 1st is National Ride a Bike Day. May 4th, Massachusetts Walk, Bike, and Roll to School Day. May 16th to the 20th is Bike to Work Week, and Friday, May 20th is Bike to Work Day. For additional information, please click on either of the hyperlinks provided in the staff report. Next item is release of the 2022 Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity notice of funding opportunity. It has been released for fiscal year 22. The bipartisan infrastructure law appropriated $1.5 billion to be awarded by US DOT for national infrastructure investment grants under RAISE. The application deadline is April 14th at 5 p.m. Eastern. For more information and to register, please visit the RAISE webinar series page at the hyperlink provided. And that is all for communications.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions of Sean? Hearing none, I'm going to move on to item number 5, which is reports. And the first one is the Brockton Area Transit Authority. And would that be Mike?
Yep, thank you, Chair.
Hi, Mike.
As usual, happy to report first on our workforce is happy and healthy and on the job. Also, similar to good news, we hit 6,000 trips on Monday, which is the first time that has happened in 2 years. So that is sort of a great reflection of how service is starting to bounce back a little bit. And we're trying to head toward, our old trip levels of, 8 to 10,000 a day. Some of that will depend on downtown Boston reopening, thereby supporting our Ashmont route. Also happy to echo the message given by Transit Matters regarding the bottleneck up on at 93 in Old Colony. I don't think it's an impossible project, but it's definitely a difficult project, and that's probably why both the T and MassDOT are resisting taking it on so far. And obviously it would be very expensive as well. But I think it is, and as the report was given, I think it is a critical problem for us to try and solve in order to help bring regular train service to the Brockton area. And that is my report for the month.
A big congratulations, Mike, for 6,000 trips. That's
Yeah.
really positive, and that really, I think, makes all of us feel good that more people are out and working and traveling and shopping, are doing that, they're going to their health providers, whatever. That's really good news. Congratulations to all of you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Item B, which is the Greater Attleboro Taunton Regional Transit Authority, GATRA, and that would be Sean.
Yes, thank you again, Madam Chair. Just a couple of quick updates. In the Taunton service area for GATRA, they actually now have 4 electric buses as well as charging stations at their depot. They are hoping to expand that to the eastern part of the region out by Plymouth and Kingston in the future when they are able to acquire an adequate sized depot as well as buses and charging stations that can operate in that area. GATRA is continuing its search for its next administrator. And lastly, they have reported that their microtransit / flex service that has been operating in South Plymouth continues to be successful, and that they have also recently added a new vehicle for that service. And that is all.
Yeah, good to hear. Any questions for Sean on GATRA? Item C, which is the South Coast Rail Project, Sean.
Yes, thank you again. As everybody knows, or for anybody who doesn't know, the South Coast Rail Project will be restoring commuter rail service to the South Coast down, through the city of Taunton and down to Fall River in New Bedford. Phase 1 is currently in progress, providing a 1-seat ride down the existing Middleborough Lakeville line. And over the last month, work that was conducted was continuing from the month of February, which involved fencing installation in multiple communities, utilizing Cotley Street and Berkeley to access the right of way for various projects. And then some of the work that was new for the month of March was 24-hour track work in Ashland and Lakeville, as well as 24-hour culvert work in Berkeley and Lakeville. And then continued additional work, including construction at station sites and layover sites, as well as overnight and daytime transportation of soils. If anybody is interested in signing up for the weekly updates for the South Coast Rail project, please click on the following link and enter your contact information to receive the updates.
Thank you, Sean. Any questions of Sean? Hearing none. Item 6, which is old business, the FFY 2022 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Program implementation, and that would be Charlie.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So on your screen, we have the project starting in 2022, and we'll quickly summarize any highlights. So the first project was advertised for construction bids, and the second project, the one in Pembroke, that was advertised for construction bids as well. So that's good news in our 2022 program. We're currently working offline with our partners at Brockton Area Transit and MassDOT to identify some additional projects for 2022. As you may be aware, there was the bipartisan infrastructure law that was signed back by the president in, I believe it was November. And what that did was actually provide additional funds for transportation planning and investments across the spectrum. So we're apprised of some additional funding, and we're working on a TIP amendment as we speak, and that should be presented perhaps to the MPO at their April meeting later this month. Moving on to 2023, project highlighted here, and the Brockton Center, Care and Lyman Street. We note that the proposed advertising date was sliding out a little bit, and from TIP readiness days, this project was recommended to move out to 2024 of the upcoming TIP. Next slide. And as I might mention, as we're scrolling through these projects, if folks have any questions on these projects, as Sean is scrolling through the screen, if there's no highlighted text, that means there's not a current update. So on this slide, there's an update on the eastern quarter improvements on 138 from Elm Street northward to just south of Union Street. Note that the designer has resubmitted a 25% design package to MassDOT in late February. So that's good news to see that moving along. Next slide. Slide. And this project here was one of the ones the MPO had identified for inclusion in the upcoming TIP, the Crescent 27 Quincy and Massasoit project in 2027. That's basically what we had for the menu of updates on current projects. So if the folks have any questions, we can entertain that now, or we can talk about that in our next agenda item, which is actually 7A, the next TIP.
Okay, which is the development of the 2023 to 2027 TIP program. And it's a review and comment on scenarios, preferred set of projects selected by O'Colony MPO.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So as we're developing the 23 through 27 TIP, one of the iterative processes is working on project readiness and working with project proponents and designers, and to see where projects are in the spectrum. So what the Old Colony MPO at their meeting last month in March was they reviewed 2 scenarios of projects, and as part of their quest to come up with a draft TIP, they selected one of the 2 scenarios, and we're going to present both scenarios to you all today. And we'd be interested in any feedback, as the MPO is still crafting the draft TIP. And I do point out that it's not a done deal yet, because the MPO hasn't released a TIP to a public review and comment period, which they will do in April. And then in May at their meeting, we'll hear public comments, consider any revisions and additional input, and potentially endorse the draft TIP to make it final. That being said, if there's any updates on projects during that public comment period, speeding up or slowing down with regard to a program year, or if a community says, hey, we're not going to do that project anymore, it's conceivable that they could come up with a new mix of projects. But at this point, we have 2 scenarios, and we'll review those and then identify the preferred set of projects. So on your screen, let's see, that's scenario 1. I note that both scenarios are identical in programming of projects with the exception of the year 2027. So I'll quickly run down the projects by year. In 2023, there's the Stoughton intersection improvements at Central Canton Tosca Drive. The second project in 23 is Stoughton corridor improvements on 138. I note that this is funded over 2 years due to the project cost. Phase 1 will be in 2023 and phase 2 will be in 2024. And the second project in 2024 is in Brockton. That's the Center Street at Plymouth Street signalization and geometric improvements project. Moving on to 2025, the first project is Lyman, Grove, and Summer Street intersection project and replacement of the Grove Street Bridge, and that's currently at 25% design. And the second project is the Easton Project corridor improvements on 138, and that's programmed for about $6.9 million. Moving on to 2026, there are 2 projects in their entirety. The first being Abington intersection improvements at Hancock and Chestnut Street. And the second project is the Duxbury Kingston signalization of the Route 38 northbound and southbound ramps. And then the third project, which is partially funded in 2026, and the second half of it is funded in 2027, is the Hanson Route 14 McQuon Street project. So moving on to 2027, this is where the scenario is different between 1 and 2. And this scenario included the 2 projects highlighted in green, the first being Abington Route 139 at Chestnut Street, signalization and geometric improvements, and the second project being Stoughton signalization and geometric improvements at Route 27 School and Summer Street. Next slide. So scenario 2, as previously mentioned, 23 through 26 are identical. The difference in this one is instead of having the Abington 139 Chestnut Street and the Stoughton Canton Summer and School Street project in 27. This scenario includes the programming of the Brockton intersection improvements at 27 Quincy and Massasoit Boulevard project, currently at 25% design. So the MPO heard these 2 scenarios, discussed it at length, and ultimately what they did at their March meeting was select scenario number 2 as a move forward basis for the draft tip. So at this point, after presenting the scenarios, I do note that beyond the regional target fundings, on the next slide, there's a category of additional projects in it. These projects will be brought into the tip as well, but we're going to be using statewide funding categories for this. And the projects highlighted in green are new projects to the draft tip. The first being Avon intersection improvements at Route 28 Spring and Harrison Boulevard, and that's programmed in 2026. The next project is not new to the tip. It's been in the tip. It's the Center Carrying Lyman Street project, and as previously noted, it's moving from 2023 to 2024. The next project is a new project to the city, and this is part of a larger effort of MassDOT Safe Streets and Safe Systems project. They're proposing to do a safety improvements project, working with the city to identify locations, to do an iterative planning process and safety improvements, and that's about $4 million. We're early in that process, with the scope being yet to be defined in its specificity and stakeholders and how this project is going to roll out. But this is programmed for 2024. And last but not least, there's a bridge project in Plimpton, Winnetoxet Road over the Winnetoxet River. So if we could slide back 1 slide, Sean, to scenario 2, perhaps we could open it up to comments from the folks on the call today about these two scenarios, if there's any feedback on the programming of projects.
Are there any comments from the callers?
And bear in mind, if there's no comments at this point,
No, not at this point.
this will be going out for a public review and over the next month anyway, so there's still time to comment. And
So,
of course, the public is invited to attend the MPO meetings as well. They're open to the public. They're held on Zoom. So there are a couple different options to provide comments, email, fax, mail it in, attend a public meeting, or they can drop by the office as well and talk with the staff here. But that's the preferred scenario number 2 that they're working on to implement. And one of the things is as projects move throughout the program year, there's always a chance to rebalance the program and bring in additional projects if funding and project readiness dictate the need.
any questions from the council members?
No,
Okay,
Thank
great.
you. Thank you, Charlie.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna move on to item 7B, which would be development of the FFY 2023 Unified Planning Work Program and the discussion of universe of projects, and that would be Bill?
Yep, thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
So we're currently updating, preparing our annual update for our Unified Planning Work Program. For those not familiar with the UPWP, that's a continuing comprehensive and cooperative, also known as 3C planning document that an NPO has to prepare each year. In short, basically what it is it's a program on how we're going to spend the transportation planning funding that comes into this NPO. There are basically 4 broad categories on the UPWP. So level 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 4,000. So 1,000 and 2,000. Those are programs that are kind of set every year. That like public participation, for example, like this meeting. That's on there. It's an annual item. Our management systems, for example, those are always on there. Those are sort of things that are in level 1,000, 2,000. It's level 3,000 where there's variety every year. Those are our big projects, our corridor studies, and a lot of the stuff that you see us bringing to this committee to highlight and talk about. Those are level 3,000. So if you want to go to the next slide, Sean. So this table, this shows our universe of projects. So basically what the universe of projects is, so these projects that you see in this top table here, these are study areas that have been identified from a variety of sources, from our internal planning operations, like our management systems, our safety management, pavement management, congestion management. They can produce study areas that can ultimately be something that we put on this universe of projects that we may want to look at. And you can see across the top row of that table, there's a variety of criteria that we evaluate each potential project against. There's a couple of federally mandated projects on there. So this will be the year that we're updating our long-range transportation plan and our human services coordination transportation plan. Those are 2 documents. They're federally mandated. They occur on the same cycle every 4 years. So those 2 will be the hallmarks, if you will, of this upcoming UPWP. Beyond that, we have flexibility, depending on funding and input from our communities and our partners on what else will we put in this program. So you can see on the table there. So for example, like Brockton, doing a looking at a Route 27 corridor study, basically the area of Reynolds Highway, from basically the intersection that was reconstructed probably close to probably 10 years ago now. So looking from the Pleasant Street at West Street Reynolds Highway, from there going westward past the mall down to Oak Street. So that'd be one potential thing. Duxbury Route 14 corridor study, that's something that we haven't looked at as an MPO yet, at least not as a corridor. We've looked at small pieces here and there. Plymouth, Long Pond Road, that's another potential one. Another potential is carrying over the regional road safety audit program that we've done these past 2 years. It's been very successful, very popular. We could always bring that back for a third year. So you can see these items on this list. Right now, our staff is preparing a high priority corridor study, so that that will not probably produce any corridors to look at for this go around, but going forward, the next year's UPWP, that process that we're going through now, that may identify additional areas that we can look at. But so basically what today is just gathering any public comment from this committee on any priorities you see. Is there anything on this list that you think we should really look at, or is if there's something missing, you can always mention that as well. Just like the tip that Charlie mentioned, this will be going out to public once we have the draft plan completed. It'll be going out to a public review period, so there's always opportunity to comment during that period as well. Anyone have any questions or input or general comments?
Okay, hearing none. Thank you so much, Bill. Great
Thank you, Madam Chair.
presentation. Item C, post-pandemic traffic volumes update. We're going to be having a discussion on the latest regional traffic volumes and trends, and that would be Sean.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. For anybody who may not have tuned into previous JTC meetings when I've done these updates, this is a project that we have been doing since summer 2020, shortly after the COVID-19 pandemic shut down everything. Just kind of wanted to, get an idea of how the traffic volumes have trended over time. And, the last update was fall of last year, so we felt that it was a good idea to provide another update for the JTC today. So for the last 2/3 of 2021, the traffic volumes were within 5% of the baseline. And just as a reminder for anybody who may not have seen the previous updates, we've been using 2019 as the baseline year, since that was the last full calendar year that was not affected by COVID, as COVID shut down everything in March of 2020. The winter of 2021 saw a normal decline, and as opposed to the winter of 2020, for November and December of 2020, there was a much sharper decline of traffic because COVID was in its second major wave. A lot of the COVID restrictions were still in place. Some of the restrictions that had been lifted had been re-implemented at that time. So it was nice to see that the winter decline was not as steep as it was from a year prior. A much happier holiday season. Traffic on Thanksgiving and Christmas Day were much higher than they were in 2020. And then so far in 2022, January took a unexpected decline in traffic. There was around 70,000 fewer vehicles in January for the average daily traffic than there was in December. But fortunately, traffic increased by about 39,000 vehicles per day in February over January, and then another 44,000 average per day in March over February. And as always, we got our data from MassDOT's MS2 Transportation Data Management System that OCPC also uses to input our data from our own traffic counts. And then here's a map of the 7 locations that we used for this project. There was an 8th location on Route 24 in Brockton at the West Bridgewater line, but we had to remove it as the sensors on the northbound side had failed, and MassDOT informed OCPC that they would not be replacing them until they repaved that section of highway. So for the time being, we had to remove that just so that the data wouldn't be skewed. But as you can see, we've got 4 counters on Route 24, 1 on 495 right next to 24, and then 2 on Route 3, 1 up in Weymouth and the other down in Plymouth. And here's just a look at the average daily traffic by month for 2021 as opposed to, or comparing it to 2019. You know, in the earlier months of 2021, before the COVID vaccine and before the restrictions had been lifted, traffic was still significantly down from the baseline year. However, beginning in March, traffic started taking a significant turnaround, having a lot more vehicles on the road. And June was the closest month to the baseline, only being 0.6% away from the baseline. And then for the rest of the year, traffic was no more than 5% less from the baseline by month, which was very nice to see. As I previously mentioned, November and December of 2020 had significant declines in traffic. And here's kind of a breakdown by the 7 locations of the traffic on Thanksgiving. The traffic varied in increases from 45.7% at the Randolph location on Route 24 south of Interstate 93, as opposed to the Raynham location on Interstate 495 just south of Route 24, which saw an 88.2% increase in traffic on Thanksgiving Day. And then also, as I mentioned, Christmas had a significant increase in traffic. The Randolph location was 29.1% higher, and the Raynham location was 59.4% higher. So it was very, very promising numbers. And then here's a look at the daily traffic for all 7 locations with the special events, such as the lifting of the COVID restrictions, the increase in indoor and outdoor capacity limits, as well as the restrictions in the state of emergencies being lifted, and then such, you know, weather events that affected traffic, such as Hurricane Henry back in August, which had the lowest daily traffic, I believe, since the spring, and then the nor'easter in late October, which affected power as well as traffic for a couple of days. And then here's a look, I'll go through these a little slowly, of each of the locations for how they're how the traffic has been for the first 3 months so far of this calendar year. As I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, January saw a significantly sharp decline in traffic, and then February was a great improvement over January, and then March was a even better improvement over February. We've had multiple locations, including Plymouth especially, which has actually seen average daily traffic figures greater than the baseline year. And Plymouth actually had multiple months last year, I want to say maybe even at least 6 months, where traffic was higher than the baseline. You know, I don't know if that's, you know, if there have been that many more people that have moved to Plymouth during COVID, or if, you know, people were just that excited to get down to Plymouth, get out to the beaches, or go down Plymouth to get to the Cape. Here's a look at all of the locations. You know, January was down 8.8% as opposed to January 2019, February down just under 5%, and then March, actually surprisingly, was only 0.6% below March 2019, which was kind of unexpected given the surging gas prices. We would have thought that there would have been a decline in traffic, but shockingly, that was not the case. And then here's kind of a look at the traffic for all the locations from 2019 to all the way through March 2022. The top chart, the data in green is 2019, the baseline year. The blue line is for 2020. The data in black is 2021, and then orange is so far what has been seen in 2022. And then here's the average daily traffic. As I mentioned previously, the average daily traffic in 2021 was pretty reminiscent of 2019 for the pre-pandemic, especially the second half of the year. And so far in 2022, March was actually not that far behind overall from the baseline in 2019. It was actually the same difference as June 2021, after all of the restrictions in the state of emergency had been lifted due to COVID. And so it's very promising for going forward for 2022. And then kind of some results and looking forward. Thanksgiving overall, all the 7 locations was 56.6% higher in traffic than in 2020, and Christmas was 38.8% higher in traffic. January's steep decline can, partially be contributed to Omicron. A lot of the hospitals were overwhelmed. The amount of COVID cases back in January was significantly high. A lot of municipalities implemented local COVID restrictions such as mask mandates. Brockton had one that is on the next line. Brockton had a mask mandate that was lifted the same time that the statewide school mask mandate was lifted on February 28th. As I previously mentioned, March's difference from the baseline was the same as the difference observed in June 2021. And the surge in gas prices shockingly did not seem to impact March traffic. We'll have to see how that, how the gas prices will be going forward, and we'll see how it will be impacting the April traffic. And we have a page on our OCPC website with this data, some literature, as well as an interactive map of all the locations, of all 7 locations, that if you click on each of them, you can even see the graphs for 2020 and 2021. And that is my presentation. Does anybody have any questions for me?
Thank you very much, Sean. I had a comment that things are looking good. It looks like more people are going out, more people are traveling, and from when you first started doing this study and survey, which is very interesting, I know, to all of us, but it looks positive that things are moving in a good direction.
Yes, absolutely.
Anyone have any additional comments or questions for Sean? Thank you. Great presentation.
Thank you, Noreen.
You're welcome. I want to move on to item 8, which is other business, and it's community local technical assistance studies. Back to Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I just have one update. We completed a study project in town of Plymouth. They had asked us to use, if we could use our drone to document some changes that they made to Billington Street. The town recently implemented a complete streets project on that roadway, so we used our drone to photo document those changes, and town is happy with that. So that was a very successful project and a successful use of our still relatively new drone. And that's, yeah, beyond that, still working on a couple other projects in the region, one for Brockton and one for Stoughton. But that's my brief update.
Thank you, Bill. Do you find that it's saving you folks a lot of time utilizing the drone?
Well, it's still relatively new, but it definitely could be. It could be a time saver. And I just it gives a new dimension. I think in the past, we something like that, we might have done ground photography or even video
Right.
dash cam video, but getting an aerial view, and especially when we can do aerial video, is really cool. So there's a lot of potential great uses of that drone.
Right. Don Howard, did you have a comment or a question?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I wasn't sure. Your box lit up, so I wasn't sure what was going on there.
I
Anyone-
coughed.
Oh, there you go. Anyone have any questions for Bill on these studies? All right, thank you so much, Bill. Great
You're welcome.
presentation.
Thank you.
Item 8B, which is the staff reviews on ENFs, EIRs, and MPCs. That would be Kyle.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
You're welcome.
So first new project we have an ENF for the town of Plymouth. Long Beach mixed sediment nourishment. And this proposed project, it's intended to enhance the coastal resiliency of a barrier beach. This will help protect the mainland of downtown Plymouth from coastal storms, especially nor'easters, and this limits exposure to the high energy environment of Plymouth Bay. We have a certificate for the town of West Bridgewater, the Lincoln Park project. The certificate states that this project adequately and properly complies with MIPA. Next is a couple public notices. First is for the town of Kingston. Notice of application and issuance of a draft groundwater discharge permit. And this is for the discharge of 1 million gallons of sanitary wastewater per day. And the last public notice is for the town of Easton. It's a notice of application and issuance of a draft groundwater discharge permit. And this is for the discharge of 31,000 gallons of treated sanitary wastewater per day. And that concludes my report.
Thanks, Kyle. Any questions for Kyle?
No.
All right, hearing none. And thanks for your presentation. We're going on to 8C, regional concerns, local community transportation issues. And I just wanted to take a moment now to acknowledge and congratulate, and I can't believe Bill McNulty has been with OCPC for 22 years.
Really?
I just can't believe it. You're just too young to be with
Yeah.
OCPC with a new baby for 22 years. You're just way too young for that.
Yeah, I can't believe it either, but yeah, it's flown by.
A big congratulations to you.
Thank you.
You're such an integral part of OCPC. I've been working with you, well, I guess 22 years, been around. I feel really old, right, Dan? I mean, we've been around for so long.
Yeah,
Great professionals.
I've been
and,
around going on 20 years, yeah.
we couldn't operate without all of your expertise.
Yeah, I mean,
All of you, but thank you so much, Bill, for being part of OCPC and doing such a great job for us all.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I've been here so long. This meeting was a evening meeting when I first started.
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it most certainly was. And someday we'll all get back to our day lunch meeting.
Yeah, bring
I
back the
suppose
pizza.
we've all lost weight because we haven't been eating pizza.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't know about that, but we miss all the in-person, in-person stuff. Charlie did not really say move the meeting back to 7 p.m. He couldn't possibly have said that.
Those were the days, huh?
Madam Chair, if I could, just on behalf of all the delegates and alternates of the Old Colony Planning Council, to again acknowledge Bill's years here at OCPC. And as Charlie just says, for all that he does, just thank you. Hardworking, dedicated, and passionate about the work. So thank you, Bill.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great job. Big congratulations from all of us.
Yeah.
Do we have any other comments? Anyone have any regional concerns they wanted to talk about? Well, thank you everyone for being here today. Another great meeting full of information that we can all think about and all the programs, and we still have time to comment on that. And we'll take a look at that stuff. And we'll see you next month. And I think that I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion,
moved.
Dan.
Okay, and it's
Second.
seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thank you all and have a great upcoming weekend.